Now, Darin and Anita with your Grand Strand Artist Spotlight.
Welcome back to the show, Darin and Anita on Grand Strand. Darin here with you, our Spotlight segment, folks. And on the phone with me from Richmond, Virginia, is Ron Moody with Ron Moody and the Centaurs. Ron, how are you?
Hey, Darin, how are you? Great to be here.
I'm doing fine, man, and it's an honor and privilege to talk to you today. I mean, your career, as I sit and look at all that you have done, it is an amazing thing, man.
Well, I appreciate it. I don't know that it's all that much, but it's been a lot of fun along the way, so I'm very blessed.
It's a journey. You know, a lot of the folks I talk to in the entertainment industry, it is so interesting listening to you guys because it is such a journey that you do from one thing to the other in the entertainment industry. I know to get started a little bit, and I'll let you tell it before I tell it because I get excited and sometimes I give away the best lines, is that how did you get started in the entertainment industry and up to If I Didn't Have a Dime?
Well, as far back as I can remember, and I'll go back to being a little kid, the first time I heard Elvis, that's when the light bulb went off, and I knew that music was something I absolutely loved. When we first started, I mean, we're so old, we go all the way back to, frankly, when we started, we were in middle school, or we used to call it junior high. The Beatles had just come in, and we decided to put a band together. Just 5 young kids, had no clue what we were doing, and I think our first gig, we made about $14 and passed the hat and bought band cards with it. And from there, later on, we added horns and so forth and built a following up in Richmond, which is where we all came from. In '69, went up to Baltimore, saved a little money. Bob Collins, of course, as you know, had done the old Gene Pitney song, If I Didn't Have a Dime. And we were doing it in our repertoire and decided to put some horns in it, went up to Baltimore and recorded it. Came back to Richmond, put it on a local label, and took it to the local radio station, which was an AM station, WLEE. It was a huge station back then. And the program director, he said, I love the song. I've got a friend at Columbia, and he played it for him over the telephone.
Wow.
And within a month, it was on the red label Columbia. And we thought, oh, this is easy, and it's been a struggle ever since. So that's how that works.
That's the entertainment business. I think even my little radio world side of this thing a little bit. Well, incredible there, and that was on Columbia. So I guess, could you still find a copy of that out there somewhere probably on Columbia?
You know, it's interesting, and I don't need to tell you, the old Northern Soul genre over in England, which is akin to what we call beach music here. The flip side of that record is an old Jimmy Holiday song. It was a cover called The New Breed.
Right.
And that thing is a collector's item over there for some strange reason. And I've seen it on sale on the Internet for some ridiculously high price. So if I've got enough, maybe I'll sell some from here. But
there you go. eBay, it's a great thing.
Exactly.
The other things that you have done that I've researched on here is you've went to work for a lot of the record labels back then. Now what was that like, and what did you do with the record labels? I know like ABC, Dunhill, and so on.
Yeah, we moved to Atlanta. We were playing in a club about 3 nights a week, actually doing a combination of rhythm and blues and country music, which was sort of ahead of its time back in the day. And I just decided I better get a day job, and I went and interviewed for ABC Dunhill and got the job and started working in the warehouse. We were still playing, so I started with ABC and later on came back to Virginia and was a sales and marketing rep, and later with Polygram, and the last company was Universal. When I was working for Universal, I had a big account, a big Navy account was my biggest account in Norfolk. And for a show, we brought in the Funk Brothers. Oh. And these were the guys that played on all the Motown stuff. And some of these guys, several of them have since passed on. But the cool thing was they were all in their late 60s, early 70s, and we had dinner with these guys, and we were just talking about music, and they were talking about going to England with Marvin Gaye and these Motown package shows. Right. And they would get off the plane, and everybody, of course, is screaming for the headliners, but people would hold up placards with the names of James Jamerson, who played bass, or they knew who all these behind-the-scenes people were. And I was James Jamerson is a famous bass player. He's long since been dead, but we were having dinner, and I was sitting next to Bob Babbitt, who came and played bass at Motown later on. And I was asking him when he came to Motown, I said, what's the first song you played on in the studio? And he's he stopped and he said, I think it was "I Was Made to Love Her" by Stevie Wonder.
Wow.
And I'm thinking, oh my God, these guys played. Look how historic it was. And they were just the nicest guys they were the most humble, that somebody would even know who they were, and it was just amazing. So I've had a pretty interesting time of seeing the music business from both sides of the fence, from the performance side and from the sales, marketing, and radio side.
So I know you've written tons of songs for a lot of folks out there now. There's folks like Archie Bell and Clifford Curry, and who else out there have you written for?
Well, the Archie song, "Do That Thing Again," I was asked if I had any material for Archie, and being a big fan and growing up with his music, I wrote "Do That Thing Again," and Archie did a tremendous job with that. And I guess probably the biggest thing, Paul Craver did "Making Memphis and Muscle Shoals," and Billy Scott did a song of mine on his Christmas project, which was "Close for the Season." Holiday Band, "Motown Here Today," wow. And D.K. Davis actually did sort of a rockabilly thing I wrote called "Rag Top Down." So
you've written all those songs. I didn't know who wrote those songs. You're blowing me away, man.
That's what I love to do. And I tell you, Darin, I get as much of a kick out of hearing other people interpret the songs I write. When I sent the song to Paul, and they arranged it a little different, added some different horn licks, and it's great when you hear it back and you see what other people add to it.
It's sort of like taking the product that you have written, I guess, if you called that a product, and they've put it all together, sort of like building something, and you get to hear that finished product and what it sounds like.
Yeah, the song is really the foundation, and they can build on that. And being a songwriter, I'm all about the song, because if you really think about this whole business, regardless of what genre, it's all built on the song, and that's exactly. Without a song, you got no artist or publisher or producer or sales rep or record executive or warehouse person. You got nothing without the song. So it's all built on the song.
Now, and you just brought up something, and I can't think of exactly what it is right now, Ron, but Elvis used to say something about a song.
Yeah, it was the speech he gave. He was made one of the top young. I forget what the organization was, but he made a speech about without a song, the day would never end, the road would never bend, and so forth. But It's very true. I mean, when you boil it all down, the whole music business is built on the creativity of the songwriter.
Of the song, that is right. Now, let me ask you this, since we're talking about songs, and a lot of the artists that I've interviewed in the last little while, I actually asked Greg Perry about this about a year ago, or a little less than a year ago. And I was asking him, what do you feel about music today and how a song is written today? Because we were talking about how back, say, even in the 70s, that the song, and in the 60s, the song, the melody, and the lyric to the song really meant something.
Yeah, I agree. I hesitate to say anything about today's music because I see myself sounding like what I considered old fogies back in our day.
Right.
When you said, "Hey, that's not like our music." I have great respect for songwriters all down through the years, and as a matter of fact, Johnny Mercer, who some people may know and may not know, I think is the greatest lyric writer of the 20th century.
Right.
So people like that, I have great respect and reverence for. But so much of today's music, I think, at least the recorded product, is producer-driven.
Right.
You can do so many tricks in the studio. You have pitch control. Back in the day, you had to take a razor blade to a piece of magnetic tape when you wanted to splice it, and you better know what you were doing.
Exactly.
And nowadays, everything is Pro Tools, and it's digital. You just go back and re-record it or punch in or whatever. So I think it's a lot easier to create a good product now than it was back in the day.
Back in the day, when everything was I call it everything was being created, but back in the 60s, and that's not been that long ago when you really look at it as a whole, and so much was being created back then, or invented. It was the invention, like Motown and all that, was the licks and the sound and all of that was invented at that time. And it's hard to think, what do you, once you've invented it, it's sort of like talking about Elvis again and going back a little bit. It's like, after you've invented it or done it, what comes after that? How do you build up or make it even greater? And I think some people have, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. I think the 60s were probably one of the most interesting periods in the history of recorded music, frankly, because if you think about the beginning of the 60s, you were coming off of the doo-wop and so forth, and you had that sort of vibe. And then again, you had the Beatles come in the mid-60s, and then by the end of the 60s, you had what became heavy metal, and it just really morphed into, for example, soul music that we grew up with Jackie Wilson and Otis Redding, people like that. It really changed and became sort of psychedelic soul when you had Sly and the Family Stone, and Temptation started to change with our Runaway Child and Cloud Nine, and it all just morphed into a whole different thing. And I think that's what happens over the years. It picks up different influences, and it just sort of shifts directions.
All those sounds come together, basically, is what happens.
Exactly.
Everybody's taking a little bit from everything. My interview with Ron Moody, and I tell you, an incredible interview it is. We have more, the last little segment of that interview coming up, Anita. Incredible talking to him.
It was great, yeah.
Well, just talking about, he talks about his career and what he's done in the music business, but when he was in the record business, talking about the Funk Show Brothers and playing for Motown and getting to know those guys, that would have to be incredible. Their first hit for Ron Moody and the Centaurs, If I Didn't Have a Dime.
I don't have a dime.
We couldn't play the jukebox.
This one's for you.
If I Didn't Have a Dime, Ron Moody and the Centaurs right there. An incredible, incredible interview. We've got the remainder of the interview coming up the first of the next hour, which is on the way next.
Darin and Anita will be back. They're back. Darin and Anita on Grand Strand.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, on the phone with me right now, if you just joined the show, is Ron Moody with Ron Moody and the Centaurs. And Ron, getting back to a little bit of what you've done here in the Carolina beach music world, I know some songs that you've had that have come through our little genre of music. Southeast corner of the USA being one, Destination Dixie, Down Home Country Girl, and Gonna Dance. And then now your latest hit, Lulus Chicken Shack. Now, Ron, how did Lulus Chicken Shack? And if Anita here on the show, she couldn't be here today for the interview, she's been talking about Lulu's Chicken Shack on the air, and she's got this Lulu's Chicken Shack kind of thing down in her voice. How did all that come about? How did Lulu's Chicken Shack come about?
Well, I have to use my Lulu voice to talk about it. No, actually, Lulu's Chicken Shack. Chicken shacks were like roadhouses back in the day in the rural South, and I love to talk about the South. I came from the South, and I love everything about it, the music and the food and everything. As a matter of fact, I have a CD called Southern Style, and the last cut is the title cut, and it talks about the music and compares it to going to a barbecue joint where you've got all the different barbecue sauces. They're all different, but they're all part of the South, and I think that's the great thing about the music. But back in the South, these roadhouses, our chicken shacks, were little rundown, funky places that people would go. They'd work hard all week, maybe on the farm or whatever, and they'll go hang out on Saturday night and just have a ball and let their hair down. And I just thought that was a great idea for a tune, and tried to put something in at about 120 beats so people could shag to it. And it seems to be working. I've had just overwhelmed with the response to it.
I know on Beach Music 45, it's jumped up 8 notches to number 14 this month. So it's climbing really fast on the charts. And I think about Beach Music 45 is that's who the DJs report to, over 100 DJs of what's really going on out there in the beach music world. So that's incredible, Ron.
Well, I appreciate that, Darin. Actually, I was just looking at Beach Music 45 last night. It was the number one breakout song at DJ Throwdown about a month ago, so I'm just tickled to death with what's going on, and the response from everybody's just been fantastic.
It's just an awesome song, and I got to go back to Anita for a minute, because me and her have been talking on the air. We wanted to know if they were really, and you've sort of answered this, really a such place, a Lulu's Chicken Shack, so we could go have some chicken and listen to some blues.
Not to my knowledge, anyway, an actual Lulu's Chicken Shack. Lulu was just, it's all a figment of my overactive imagination.
Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to talk with us. Ron, where can they find more information on Ron Moody and the Centaurs? Do you have a website out there?
Oh, of course. It's www.ronmoody, and the Centaurs, and it's all one word, and Centaurs is CENTAURS.com. You can buy the CD there, or you can go to iTunes or CD Baby, lots of the digital sites. I think Judy has it at her place down in Myrtle Beach, so check it out, and I hope folks enjoy it.
I tell you, well, Ron, we'll put a link to your website on ours also, so you folks, you can go to grandstrandshow.com and find that too. Ron, again, thank you so much. At any time you've got anything new or anything you want to talk about, do give us a call back.
Well, I certainly will, and thanks again, Darin, and give my best to Anita, and hopefully next time you'll both be on the phone.
We'll do that. Thank you, Ron Moody.
Thanks a lot, Darin.
We'd like to thank Ron Moody so much for that interview, man. I tell you, incredible. And he gave you props, even though you couldn't be here for the interview with us, but he was awesome. And here's Ron Moody's latest, and man, it's climbing the charts. Lulus
Chicken Shack. Oh, I love it.
I won't tell y'all about no place I know. No place called Lulus Chicken Shack. It's just across the track. Down at Lulus Chicken Shack.
Music interviews, knowledge, and more. Darin and Anita on Grand Strand, a music evolution.